when I first started in the industry, I was emailing different people, got nothing back. It happened for years. And that is what I was saying to you before about you have to have a bit of resilience because it's going to be quiet for the first couple of years maybe where you're not getting people back. Because if you think about it, why would they come back to you? If they don't know who you are, if you've got no trail.
Welcome to the Sonya Barlow Show. My name is Sonya Barlow and I am the host of this very authentic audio and video based podcast. Ultimately, I wanted to interview ordinary people who are becoming extraordinary all over the world. It's me, my camera, and my recorder sharing real life, authentic interviews with people on the ground. I really wanted to create something which doesn't necessarily exist on the internet today. And that's no noise, no clutter, to the point conversations with very cool people all over the world. Most of our content, if not all of it, is directed by you, our listener, our watcher, and our audience member. So thank you. If you have any questions that you want to answer, if you want to be a part of the show, or if you're just interested in where we're traveling next, drop me a line, hello@sonyabarlow.co.uk or @sonyabarlowuk. I won't keep you any longer because we have amazing interviews lined up from people all over the world. So let's get straight into the chat.
So you've been doing... Is it hard being an editor?
It is. I didn't think I could do it because partly I've never been an editor. And I was offered the job last year in August. I had a bit of imposter syndrome for about I didn't accept it. So then I spoke to various different editors. So I've got a really good friend, Ernest. He was an editor for Time Out. And sort of said snap out of it because I don't obviously have the experience. However, he said you can learn on the role and just get advice. And the same thing, I spoke to a couple of other people. And I said, is it worth taking? And they said you'll get automatic respect from a lot of people, and then it will help with press trips and etc. And it actually has helped. But when I took the job, it was one of the toughest things. So I got offered it in August, and then I'm trying to think actually, it was December I accepted. So it was nearly 4 or 5 months before I said yes. Partly because I didn't feel as though I was good enough. And I suppose that's where the imposter syndrome came in, where it's like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? I was comparing myself to others who've got years of experience. But then the magazine is a very new magazine, it's like 3 years old. And they said to me that if you take this job, we will hire a lot of... the aim is to get new-ish writers with established. And I actually like that. So it was helping out newer writers it's been actually really good. I've been able to help a lot of fresh...
And we'll get on to that because I think you also helped me as a new writer. For those who are watching and don't know what you do, can you give us a summary of your journey thus far and which mag you're actually editing for? Because I guess you haven't introduced it yet.
Yes, so it's very difficult to answer this question because I can't figure out, because I would say I'm a travel writer, broadcaster as well, podcaster and an editor. And I'm an editor for a magazine called Voyagers Voice, which has been, how many years? About 4 coming to 4 years now. And it's been quite a journey because when I first started writing or travel editing, it was I've been traveling for about 18-20 years on my own, and I look young, right? But I suppose I had the experience of traveling, and that was the main thing. And when I first started this career path nearly 4 years ago, I had that travel knowledge. I'd been traveling for long enough. I think getting those experience where you've gone off like 2 months all over. I remember I went through to the Balkans, through to Central America, then through to South America, and then through to Asia. Finished off in China, for example. Went from India to China. That was like a 2-month period where I've just done it, and just getting that experience is vital. So when it comes to knowledge of what it's like to travel, that's a key part to travel journalism anyway. You have to travel, because a lot of the newer guys that have come through, they ask for advice, and I always say just go out and travel first, because you need to know a little bit. Because a lot of time when you start press trips, I always find press trips are very restricted because they're telling you where to go, and they're also, well, you're literally scheduled, and you don't really get time to go meet the locals, just hang around yourself, places, coffee shops. And I think a vital part of traveling is you got to find your own journey, and I feel as though it changes your perspective, and it definitely changed my perspective in life, and I'm sure it has done for you as well.
Absolutely.
So it's a key part to
But you
work.
don't have a journalism degree.
No, my degree is in the arts. So
Okay.
I specialise in editing, videography, photography as well.
Okay, so more on the media side.
More in the media side. My dream was always to have. So in university, for example, we did remember my last year, we did like a show where we hired an actor and we filmed in a location. I did the editing. It was great, and I thought this is going to be the path. But then I graduated in 2009, and that was the financial crisis, and the art sector took a massive hit with funding. And I think I was working in a gallery at the time, but I never gave up that dream anyway. I've been editing for now 18, 20 years, but I always thought, and photography as well, whilst I was traveling, I was taking photos anyway, but it took a few years to get back into it. And you never give up hope. And I think my biggest inspiration has been my auntie, who's based up in Singapore. And when I was around about 25, she gave me a proper lesson. Well, not lesson, a proper telling off, let's just put it that way. And said, you're wasting your talent. You could do so much more. And she was right. I felt as though I was working various different jobs, which actually does help as well. So this career path that I'm in now, I feel as though because I've done many different jobs, it's helped me to do the job that I'm doing now, because I've got a bit of a business acumen.
Absolutely. And now you're an editor for a magazine called
Voyagers Voice.
And ultimately, that's, from my understanding of your journey, is you had an arts degree, you worked a variety of jobs, you went and traveled. 4 years ago, you started writing around travel and going into the journalism field. And then a year ago or so, this is kind of November 2023. So in end of 2022, you were offered the role of the editor.
That's correct, yes.
And now you're an editor.
Yes.
I guess I don't really understand what an editor is. So I'd love for you to break it down as to what your job role therefore really is. And the reason why I ask that is because for me, an editor in the word means to edit, which I'm therefore assuming, like most people, and this is a question we get very often, is do you then actually get to go on trips, or do you get to write yourself? Or is it just you're managing people, managing invoices and editing other people's work?
It's a combination of different things. So I send out a pitch call. Like, for example, I did a newsletter the other day, and I asked for someone to pitch about a destination in Asia, because our next edition is going to be all on Asia. And I've got quite a lot of writers who have pitched, and I've commissioned. I can't commission everyone, unfortunately. And so my role will be to send out a pitch call. I would then choose who I think is the best fit, depending on obviously the pitch as well. And we can go on to that a little bit afterwards, but a pitch is really, really important. How to
definitely have to go into that.
Really, well, you really have to make it an eye-opener for me. So for me to really go, oh, wow, who's this person? I've got to say, right, I really want... A bit like you, actually, when you first messaged me, I was like, who's this person here with? She's pitching this, and it was... Oh, hang on a second, I quite like the way you approached it. And I think sometimes you have to be bold.
And so I guess just on that note, for context, right? Because this is the first time we're meeting in person, and we've obviously DM'd a few times and worked together now. The first time I traveled, really traveled by myself, was in my early 20s when I had a study abroad year for Italy. It changed my life. I didn't even know that you could find yourself through traveling. And I really found myself because I was living by myself with housemates for the first time, having to assess my values, and staying in a hostel for the first time. I remember genuinely messaging my mum being like, I'm going to go stay for a hostel. Am I allowed to stay in a hostel? She's like, yeah, I guess so. But I was 20 something years old. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to stay in this hostel. She's never stayed in a hostel. She doesn't know the experience of hostels, but a lot of my aunties have. So she was like, if you want to travel, go and travel and do it properly. But I didn't go traveling for about 6 months because 6 months, probably not 6 months, sorry. I didn't go traveling for about 6 months because I was waiting for friends to do it with me.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh my God, no, I'll do it with them. I can't do it by myself. Like, I've never done it before. And then they just kept flaking. And then one day I was like, I'm just going to book this hostel in Pisa because I want to go see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And I did so. I traveled by myself. I went to Lucca. I went to Cinque Terre. Let me pronounce that correctly. And I just ate and walked my life away. And it was great. And I was like, wait, why am I waiting around for people? Traveling opens your eyes so much to different people's cultures, food, and ways of life. And how can I incorporate this into my day-to-day living? And since then, I have traveled immensely, right? I travel probably 3-4 times a year. I mean, since the pandemic lockdown flights have opened, I've probably been on 15 trips between 2021 and 2023. And then I started writing about it in my own spare time, and I've had a lot of requests from people to like do vlogs or to do TikTok reels or to talk about it. But I always felt like, similar to your point earlier, I'm not good enough, or I felt like an imposter. I felt like, no, there are people who are doing it much better than I am. So why should I do it? And then early this year, my brother and sister, so my younger brother and sister, convinced me to start a YouTube channel. So that was in January. And when I went to Kenya, I was like, look, why not just find people to interview? Why not talk about traveling? Why not vlog it? And that's done really well. And then I've had numerous people I've spoken to since then. And then I was like, right, the next step might be the writing part. But what always worried me was I'm not a journalist and I don't have a journalism degree. And when you go to a lot of these roles, or you go look at job roles, for example, it says you have to have a journalism degree, not kind of lived or learned experience.
But I think nowadays, if you look at the old days, 15, 20 years ago, where the traditional format, newspapers, the big boys, big guys, you don't necessarily have to go down that route anymore.
Yes.
Because there's so many different digital magazines,
which is super exciting
now, and it's opened up the field of talent. And if you think about those times, you had to go into the office, Fleet Street, or wherever you lived, and you don't necessarily have to go down that route. So if you look at my journey, as I said, 4 years ago, when I first started talking to I've got a really good mentor anyway. So Ernest, as I said to you before, Ernest White II, he's a television host in the States, and we talk all the time, hours and hours and hours, just going through. And then I sent him a piece that I wrote, and he just literally red pen all over it, and said, "You need to do this, you need to do this." Oh my goodness! It's like I don't know. It didn't knock my confidence. I was like, I need to get better. The constructive feedback was really good. So these days you do have that opportunity to make it into the field.
Absolutely.
And I feel as though it's helped the industry because it's
I think so, but you don't have the skills. So a good example being, I DM'd you because I was like, right, I'm really keen to write about things, and the only way I can is by messaging people or editors or building a relationship, because I'm not a strong pitcher. Okay. Because when I started pitching, I don't know how to pitch because I don't have the skills to do it. And so some of my first few pitches were like essays on an email, right? Like basically the story, the outline, the context, the why. And they were, now looking back, I laugh, and I'm like, they were actually terrible. But because I don't have the skills, you don't know the skills. Same way where, and we'll talk about this because I do want to, right? I'm really, really, really grateful that you gave me the opportunity to write about Malaysia, which is an experience that I absolutely loved and I'm obsessed with anyway. And I think, Malaysia is a great destination for anyone to go travel if they want a good experience of East meets West, plus a complete different insight of how a large part of the world live. But I didn't know how to write around it. So even the feedback you gave me, which you can go into, I didn't find it offensive. If anything, I was grateful that someone spent their time giving me feedback, because it just makes me a healthier writer. Because again, you don't have the skills, right? I did business at university, and then I worked in tech for 5.5 years, and I run my own business now. So I have writing skills, but they're very different to writing for travel writing and journalism skills.
Yeah, when I fed you back the first draft and said it needed changing here and there, what I tend to do is we'll highlight what worked anyway. So say this is great, this is good, but then I always say this: you could always improve it. So it will help make the article stronger. And honestly, as I said, when I took the job on, and the aim was to get newer writers and help them build, or give them confidence anyway. So when they pitch to other magazines or other editors, they could showcase their work and say, because the worst thing is an editor who just checks all the grammars and doesn't really feed back to the writer, because it doesn't really help the writer, I don't think. And so I wanted to when I took on the role, I took it on. I always do it with 100%. Anything that I do with 100%. And some writers might find it possibly, well, they might get upset by it, but it's not to upset. My role is to help you, and helping you become a better writer is all I want to do, really. And as I said, we hire a mixture of known writers and newer writers. So the next edition will have a mixture of both, so half and half, I would say. And I like to give chances to people in destinations places where you would never think they would have had the chance. So I commissioned someone in actually Pakistan, India, then I commissioned someone in, Colombia as well. These are people who really want to get into the field, and they feel as though they want to break into the UK market, the US market. How are they going to do that? So I feel as though I'm happy to give them a chance.
And I think it's really impressive you do that. But for anyone listening and watching right now, I can imagine their question is, okay, Shebs, you've given us the spiel, and I'm sure that they'll connect with you afterwards. But how do you actually break into the industry? Like, if someone wanted to have their first commission, they wanted to write, what to you as an editor will also make them stand out? But also, what does a good pitch look like? Because I personally find it really difficult to pitch, because I don't know what you're meant to say in their email, and then should you follow up, should you not follow up? And if someone comes back to you, oh, this isn't right for our magazine, but keep pitching, or if someone ghosts you, what do you then do?
I'll take it back slightly. So to break into the industry ideally, what you need to do is networking. Networking is a massive part of it. So when I first started, I started with the podcast and the writing element, but I just started talking to, a bit like what you were doing actually. You were DMing different people, etc. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I've seen people do that right now with me actually. They'll contact me and I'll get messages sort of, and I know what they're doing. They're trying to get someone established. And I suppose I could say I'm established to an extent now, where they're trying to, I know quite a lot of people. So if I think, oh, this person's really good, I might then recommend them to someone else. That's how you really do need to network. And then if I then recommend someone who's come to me and say, right, okay, you should really pitch to so-and-so, I'll let them know you're pitching. That will help, I think. Because a lot of the time when you're cold pitching, it's difficult because they're probably getting pitched, I don't know. I get quite a lot in a day sometimes. Sometimes I'll get like 20. Earlier on, I remember I used to be getting like 60 yeah, seriously, it was that many people pitching.
I can imagine that though, and you're an editor. I'm a business person first. And, just last night, I'm talking within a period of 5 hours. I had 60 emails. I was like, why? Why are you emailing me? Why am I subscribed to this many emails? Why do we need this many emails happening every day? And actually, just on a side note, the stats tell us that we spend about 3 hours a day on emails. I just don't think that that's healthy for anyone. And what that then touches on is that instant gratification of why have someone not responded in the next 24 hours. But I think because of that experience of, oh, if they really wanted it, they would have responded straight away. I think that's what also worries new writers like myself, because it's like, wait, my editor's not replied back to me in 24 hours. They must hate it. They must dislike it. They must not want anything to do with me. So your brain goes into, not only am I not good enough, but it goes into, they probably want nothing to do with me. I'm now scared to reach back out. Oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm terrible.
Yeah, I understand that. I think when you first, I was aware, I was on a press trip when you sent in your first. I think I didn't get back to you for a couple of days, and it wasn't because I didn't get the chance, literally didn't get the chance to read it. So a lot of the editors do, because we travel, we have to be on the road, and so I'm going away in a couple of weeks' time. I've just come back from the States as well, so we're on the road and we're doing it, and so we have to do all different kind of things. A lot of the time, I like to think I've got a lot of different hats on anyway. because of the stuff that I do. So as I said, the broadcasting, podcasting, etc. And you shouldn't, again, you don't feel as though you are not good enough. And this is where I said I've had that imposter syndrome where I just didn't feel as though I was good enough to be in this field. But again, having a good mentor is really, really important. I've got to stress, because if you know someone within the industry has got experience, just use their knowledge. And if they're happy to provide you that feedback, a lot of the time you have to obviously pay for a mentor, but if you can make friends with someone, and I'm sure they're happy to help a fellow pro, and I'm always happy to help a fellow person within the industry make them better. If they reach out to me, I have no problems whatsoever giving them my time. And it's not, I think some people like to charge. I don't like to charge that kind of stuff, because I feel as though if they are, I suppose, getting out there, they're bold. And this industry, you'll know what it's like. It's a cutthroat industry. You could be here today, you could be out tomorrow. So I had a radio show early 2020 till last year, and the contract ran out, and the studio said that we'll come back out to you, and it's been another year. So I haven't done the radio show for about a year. But that's, so when they said to me last year, again, this was like summer, and then I got offered the role for the editor's role in August. So it was like June, and then August came. So I not necessarily lost a radio role, but they just said, we're gonna, funding wise, has been a bit of a problem. I said, fair enough. And so you think your life is, I was this guy who was on radio interviewing different people, and it was great. It was amazing. The experience was unbelievable. And then that can happen. So,
but I'm also hearing you say that that's a part of your identity, that you kind of have to push to one side and create new identities regularly, especially in this field. So, so far what you've covered on is, even when you started as an editor, you felt like an imposter, but you went out and sought help. One way that you did that was to build your networks, be that bold enough and slide into people's DMs or ask for an introduction. And then when it came to pitching, you mentioned having a unique angle, because, you get 60 emails or so, possibly a day. And so you really want someone to stand out from that crowd. When you are looking at a good pitch, before we go into the change of identity and the freedom that comes with this work as well, what does a good pitch look like to you? Is it subject line pitch? And then here's the, headline, here's 3 points I'm going to cover, here's who I am, here's how I can get it done.
If, for example, when I first started doing a pitch call, I'd say make sure you have so-and-so in the subject. And believe it or not, a lot of writers will forget that. And so if I'm getting that many pitches, and if you don't put that in the subject, then I'm quite likely to think, oh, actually, they could be quite hard to work with. I'm also, I get a lot of pitches from, I must say this, a lot of writers who are established writers as well. And they might send me pitches where they've got they'll list their articles. Say I've written for National Geographic, the BBC, you name it, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily impress me. So it's all about the story that they're trying to tell. And if there's an angle that I feel as though has been told many times, and just to make you aware that our magazine we want to look at areas of destination where people haven't travelled to as much. So when you pitched to me about Malaysia, I thought this is really good. When the person who pitched to me about Pakistan, about a place where I'd never heard of, I thought, wow, this could be good for Pakistan as a tourism anyway. And someone else pitched to me about Sri Lanka, a destination that I'd never heard of. So those are sort of stuff that really stick out to me. And also you got to, whoever you're pitching to, just remember what they need, what they want. So if a destination is, if they're into Europe, for example, you're going to be looking at pitching them specific areas where people, and the demographic that reading demographic is, they are holiday makers in their 60s, so you're going to have to be pitching them something specific on a destination where it's easy for people to go to. But our magazine, I feel as though it's an off the beaten path magazine.
So a good example being, if I was to pitch a story in London, right? Because we're in London. Yeah. You would, as an editor, rather it be something like what versus another.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily take London
because it's not a part of your magazine coverage.
It's not. I'm not to say that we wouldn't take it. It's just London it's known to everyone.
Okay.
And it's it's always covered.
Yes.
And all the big newspapers are always covering it. I feel as though it's not. I feel as though our magazine can highlight destinations where.
Would you
it's
take
not been
one
covered.
in Lisbon?
Possibly.
But again,
but
the
it
point
depends on
being
the
is
angle,
it's
though.
quite covered.
Yeah, so it's covered. Yeah, so when someone pitches, and if they're telling me about Lisbon and it's very specific, and they say it's never been covered before, and they list different things, I think, wow, okay, this is really cool. I'm
See that,
quite
yeah,
happy
absolutely.
happy to pitch.
Whereas
happy
something
to
like
commission that.
London, because it's so well known, it might not have that unique angle.
I'm
Or it could be something like, 7 hidden spots that only local Londoners know
Yeah.
about.
If there was something very specific like that, where, for example, Brick Lane, maybe perhaps, or somewhere. Well, Brick Lane years ago wasn't really renowned for
Absolutely.
what it is right now, anyway. But 15, 20 years ago, when they were first covering it, it was a whole new thing. I'm sure there's parts of London now that's not been covered. I'm sure there is. If
Absolutely.
someone pitches to me and they really sell it to me within the description anyway, and they really show me. And when I say show me, not necessarily tell me this is what's happened, this is where it is. And that's part of writing as well. I'll come on to that in a second, actually. So really show me that this angle is really a good fit for the magazine. I'm very happy to listen and commission them. And when I talk about showing, so another thing about writing as well, if you're new to the industry, the easiest thing to do is when you're writing is start telling. And when I mean start telling in your writing, as in you'd say, for example, I walked into the restaurant and there was a really nice chandelier with a piano. But really, when I say show me, go into the description. So I walked into the restaurant, it had a 1965 crystal chandelier with da-da-da-da, and that will really help.
Okay, so
the
that level
reader.
of detail really
Yeah.
helps you, but also
100%.
as an editor, set somebody apart from somebody
Yes.
else who was pitching.
Yeah, so really show, because the audience wants to, or the person reading it,
Wants to visualize it.
visualize it. So if you're telling, in your writing, if you're just telling, you can't really visualize it because people know what chandeliers are, but you want to really visualize it, and that really sells the destination or the place, and that's really, really important anyway. That's what I think anyway when it comes to writing. That's one tip I can give to people, that really start thinking about showing the audience or showing the reader what they're reading into, and they're like, wow, I can visualize it, I really want to go there, let me book the holiday. Or that's really key, I think. So
It's super interesting. And then someone has pitched, you've come back as an editor and you've said yay or nay. If you've said yes, are you, not just as Shebs, but generally as Editor X, are you comfortable with them asking questions? Do you want them to send you a draft? Or do you think that shows their lack of experience and you can't trust them?
Well, when I've commissioned them and they're telling me usually what I do is, if they told me within the pitch this is what they want to write about, I will then look at an angle and say, right, okay, this is what I think it'd be like when I did it to you. So I'd send you a list of what I think. So guidelines is really, really important. Mm-hmm. And I must stress, actually, there's a lot of editors out there who don't do what they should really do, actually. And that really leaves the writer guessing. And you don't want a writer thinking, what do I do? So I would get everything covered. So one of the things I do, actually, I don't think a lot of magazines or a lot of newspapers do, is I always send out a freelance agreement first, and then, because all of our writers are freelancers, and then a commission agreement as well. So then you're guaranteed, you've got a contract to say that I should be paid this as long as I've produced the work. And there's and this is really a bad part of the industry as well. The business side of it, I think, is a lot of writers, freelancers anyway, because a lot of the writers, travel writers, or majority of them are freelancers. And they've said that when I said it's a cutthroat industry, it is really cutthroat. So they will pitch, they get commissioned, and I've had well-known writers who have told me that they've pulled the commission. And I said, did you have a contract? It's like, no. Well, there you go. This is where you should really have.
But is not an email confirmation good enough contractually?
Well, I suppose it should be.
But it's not.
But it's not. So having something, because by law, they'd say, well, was everything... I was told this years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Is it in writing? have you got it? Have you signed anything? It's like, no, I haven't. No, well, there you go. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
So, and it really does affect the industry. I feel as though, and having those guidelines, contracts, it really helps. I want to make the writer feel very special. So you're getting a contract, you're getting a commission agreement, you're guaranteed this.
And that comes from your own experience. So maybe because you don't have that typical linear route of journalism.
Yeah, possibly, and also the fact that I've gone through it myself.
Yes.
So I felt as though, my goodness, this
and
is
on
really
that point,
bad.
so earlier you touched on that change of identity. Now what it sounds like to me, especially in the writing world, and especially when you're doing travel writing, is you're going to have to adapt your identity several times.
Yes, you do.
To stay up with current trends, to stay up with what people want, and also when you're working with PR and press trips.
Yes.
How do you navigate that? Because that also sounds like code switching to me, which actually can be quite exhausting for the brain. But also on one side can be really difficult when you're trying to define a niche, but you don't have that niche to go to. And so a good example being, an editor might assume, well, you were writing about here, now you're writing about this, and now you're writing about this. Do you actually know what to write about one thing?
Yeah, for myself anyway, I haven't gone down a route where I specialize in something very specific. It's wherever I feel as though I can make a difference. And within the industry anyway, there's a massive issue with diversity in general. So there's not many diverse writers out there. And I feel as though angles that I can cover, for example, my trip to the US when I went to Charleston, again, the only reason why they listened to why they felt as though I would have been a great fit. So when I pitched them the angle, when I approached them and said, Charleston, when I spoke to some of my family members and people of other diverse background, first thing they said to me was, oh, is Charleston not a racist area? Isn't it known for slavery, all that stuff? It was known for its slavery back in, obviously, 1865 when Abraham Lincoln decided to obviously stop slavery, but then the aftermath of stuff was going on in that city. And when I pitched them and said, have you ever covered an angle where someone from a South Asian perspective has gone over there? Do you get many South Asians going to Charleston? And they went, oh, actually, we've never really covered that. So my trip to Charleston was based on that. So my pitch when I had my meeting with them was, and I actually approached the vice president of the organization, and I just went up to him and said, "What have you ever done this before?"
Okay, a few questions there, because I've got questions in my brain. One, how did you find the email contact for someone that you were pitching to?
Well, for him anyway, I just, because I knew where he was. So he was at an event, so I just approached him. And again, this is what I was saying to you about networking.
Absolutely.
So when I first started in the industry, I was emailing different people, got nothing back. It happened for years. And that is what I was saying to you before about you have to have a bit of resilience because it's going to be quiet for the first couple of years maybe, where you're not getting people back. Because if you think about it, why would they come back to you? If they don't know who you are, if you've got no trail.
It's a very valid point. So you went networking and you reached out to them, but on the background you were trying to build up your credibility.
Yeah, so he was actually at the Royal Hampton Court Flowers show. So I knew he was there, so I thought, okay, this is a chance, an opportunity to go speak to. I really want to go, and let me say to him, we can do this angle. So I went up to him and said, oh hey, we can discuss so and so, and then because I saw him in Charleston, and he said to me, I really like the way you approached me and you broke the ice like that, and I liked you straight away, and I want to work with people I like as well. So that's why I introduced you
to likability bias is also a real thing.
It is.
And then when
I was going to say, you have to, even when people are pitching,
yes,
if I know the person and I know who they are and I've heard what they're like, I wouldn't pitch them. I wouldn't commission them.
Yeah.
Because you want to work with people who
are
you
nice.
can get on with. Nice, who you can work with.
I think that reputation credibility piece is really important that you're focusing on right now, especially when it comes to building a personal brand and being known in the industry. So we'll tap into that because I want to talk about your socials and how they've played a part too. But back to the Charleston. So when you pitched for this, what did your subject line say? Did it say, have you ever had a South Asian person in Charleston?
Well, again, the best thing I did was it was face to face.
Yes.
So I said we can do this.
Yeah.
And they said okay, we'll send out an email. I'm back in Charleston on Tuesday, so I did. So the email, because I'd met him,
Absolutely.
it was easy.
Yeah.
Hey Doug, we met on Sunday or whatever day it was. Great to meet you. Hope you had a great time. And that's personable, you see. So they already know who I am, and it's easy for me. That's an easy pitch.
Yes.
It's not a cold pitch. They know me.
Yeah.
We discussed about me coming to Charleston. Love to discuss more about this, the angle that we spoke about. He got back to me straight away. And just imagine how busy they are. And he is busy, by the way. He got back to me within like a couple of hours. Hey, Shebs, great to meet you. Would love to get you on board. Introduced me to Courtney, who was the media relations person. Then Courtney replied back and said, let's get a meeting in the diary. So that was early July. Meetings in the diary mid-August. So we go in, I pitch again. This is what I want to cover when I come to Charleston. Have you ever done this where people from a South Asian background? And again, when I went there, by the way, I didn't see many tourists who look like me anyway.
Yes.
And
so it's a nice coverage. I guess a couple of things that are coming to my brain right now is, one, you're an editor. Why do you have to pitch yourself? And then the second question that's coming up to my brain is, if you have to pitch yourself and you're basically getting paid for that one article, how do you actually make money in this industry?
it is. So for that, for example, so they are the PR or the tourism board anyway. So they're actually the
So in this example, you had to, even as the editor, pitch to the tourism board.
You still have to pitch. You may think, oh, it's an easy.
That's what
to be honest
thought.
with you, it is. I must say, since I've become an editor, I've had more PRs, more tourism board. I've had so many this year, which I didn't even think about before. Now that you think about it, when I think about it, why not accept it immediately if it was going to be not easy, by the way, but I think, as I said, you get that respectability straight away. But you still have to pitch. And actually, the tourism board for Charleston didn't actually want me to do any writing. They said, we want you to do a podcast on it. And I was like, happy to do a podcast. But I said I could do writing, etc. But again, when we spoke about, it's really, really important, even at that stage when you're going into a meeting with someone else, you may have had a great chat with the vice president or whatever, but if you don't hit it off with the next person, they might say, well, no, hang on a second, I don't like this person, didn't cover this, didn't do that. So it's really, really important. You always, at the highest of integrity, you have to always make sure that when you're talking to anyone or when you're representing yourself, you are your own brand.
Absolutely.
Even if you're working for a magazine or you're making sure you have covered all areas. And I made sure, and we hit it off straight away, and within like 5 minutes.
Have you ever had a scenario where you haven't hit it off with someone, or you've not been able to go on that press trip you wanted to go on?
There's been few occasions where I've hit it off, but I've not been chosen for various different reasons, which is absolutely fine, by the way. And I get that. That's part of the...
So it's not personal most of the time?
No, I don't take it personally either. I know it's business at the end of the day, and they're looking for an angle, and it's absolutely fine. I have no issues with that, because again, if they're looking for something specific, and by the way, for Charleston, it was just me on my own. There's no one else, and I suppose that's the reason why that is because there was no other writers who was pitching to them about that.
And most press trips therefore want what coverage? Guaranteed coverage?
They do, yes. So
the guaranteed part is quite difficult.
It is. So when I'm going to Gibraltar in a couple of weeks' time, and I had to pitch to them, and so actually I submitted a interest, and they said to me, we'll come back to you. I didn't hear back for a couple of months, and then the reason why that was a very popular one is because Mary Berry's going to be there, and I bought Mary Berry's book 10 years ago, her cooking book.
Sad times when she left Bake Off, sad times.
So there was a lot of interest in that. So
absolutely.
I put my thing in, and the person said to me, well, actually your website covers everything. So your website is really, so I was talking about the brand awareness. Your website is really, really important. If you've got a website, if you've got a podcast, you've got anything, they want to see, and it's going to be easy as well to navigate. So my website is very simple. You go on there, you can see the front page, and you can navigate quite easily. So they said to me, actually, no, your website's fine. We can see all your articles there, all your podcasts, everything there. So that's fine. We'll use that. They came back to me a couple of months later and said, hey, we actually liked you. You're one of the 5 chosen out of, I don't know, 60 people. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And again, but they said to me that you've got something that we felt others didn't have.
A unique angle.
A unique angle, yeah.
Or a brand.
Yeah, and I think you have to be very, very unique. Yeah, brand or something. You're going to have something very unique if you want to make, I suppose, make it in this industry last long anyway. So you don't want to be a one-hit wonder or you're here for a short term.
But then talking about making it in this industry, I don't really understand how people get paid. I don't understand how it's a sustainable living. I don't even understand how you can afford to go on a press trip.
It is very... There was a report done by a friend of mine. They have like a travel newsletter, and they did a thing on wages, and a lot of travel writers barely get paid anything. It's between, I believe, between 0 to 10,000 a year. Sometimes the really good established ones will be making between 10 to 20,000. So a lot of people, when I said a lot of hats, that's why there's a lot, you're doing different jobs, because just travel writing isn't enough sometimes. The established guys who have been around for a very long time, they'll always get work. They'll always get commission. They'll always have magazines that they've...
But it's a difficult process. So a good example being, we're talking about payment and money, which is really important. I've had press reach out to me. I've had PRs reach out to me to go on a press trip. Now they're like, you can go on X press trip, but we need guaranteed coverage here. So that then means that I have to go and spend 7 to 10 days pitching to different editors just to get something signed off, which maybe is 100 to 300 pounds.
Yeah.
As an example, as an article. Then go on that press trip, which is going to take 3 days. Then write something up for, let's say, 300 pounds. And where does the rest of my money come from?
Yeah. That is the dilemma where...
So is that just industry standard?
At the moment it is, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's where... Is it sustainable for long term? Potentially not, because you probably will have to do other work. I'm very fortunate. I do have a magazine.
Of
and
course.
I've got... I said, yeah, I've had the
But
radio
let's take it
station,
back to when you weren't
etc.
an editor.
Yeah. So I had the radio.
So that was your
That was my
main
bread and butter. Yeah.
main kind of income.
Yeah, and then you were pitching as a freelancer as well.
Absolutely. Which is why I have an actual business.
Yes.
I'm like, right, my side hustle is this, and my side hustle is travel and tech writing, and my side hustle is, business travel, for example, because I love to travel, but I can't sustain that as an actual job role.
So at the moment you probably can't, but let's just say if you did become known within the industry and people start to recognize you, so it is always a long term. As a travel writer, I've got a really good friend, Shane Dallas. First advice that he gave me was, if you got any job, anything, as you just said, a side hustle, use this as a side hustle, build up your career. Don't give up the job because you need to put food on the table pretty much. And if you don't have an income stream and you're relying on pitching and freelancing, then you're going to really struggle. A lot of travel writers, they do all sorts of jobs, all sorts of other. They all tell me, and it's a good thing because you go on these press trips, but you're doing other jobs at the same time, and that's important because you do need to. And also, you can then give quality articles or quality coverage. And if you're worried about money, you could be churning out rubbish, really, to be quite honest with you. And then you'll get a reputation within the industry as a bad writer or as a bad worker, and you don't want that either. So income stream is very, really important. And if you do have a job elsewhere, keep doing that job. And if you can sustain it somehow for the first few years, you really have to work hard, though. I can't stress enough, you don't get far without working hard. Me sitting here with you right now, I haven't got here by luck. It's been 7 days a week, all hours of the day, trips here, trips there.
Because it's basically like running your own business unit.
It is. You are running your own business.
You are running your own business unit.
Your brand.
Absolutely.
You are your brand. And who's going to be the biggest cheerleader? It's going to be you, isn't it?
And so if you talk about that brand point, because you've touched on it a few times. 1, you've said build the credibility. 2, you've said build your networks and mentors. 3, you've said, in your example, in your case, you have a good website. For anyone who's watching, who's at the start of their journey, how do they stand out? So I guess some things to consider is, do you need a TikTok channel? Do you need a website that shows articles? Do you need paid articles on your website? Is that how you build your portfolio? Like, how does it work? 'Cause I feel like it's a little chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, I possibly was very fortunate. Well, I don't know whether it was fortunate or not, but my podcast, when I first started it 4 years ago, I'm coming up to my 100th episode very soon as well. I made sure it was at the highest of quality. And as I said, I had a degree in the art, so I knew how to edit a video.
Okay, so break that down for us. You started a podcast. What's the podcast on?
So it's all about travel. And
Great.
I brought on people to discuss, not necessarily, we don't talk necessarily about destinations or whatever. It's about their journey.
And that's a YouTube first.
That was a YouTube
podcast.
first, yeah. And then I decided to do it on all other podcast platforms.
How did you reach out to your first, let's say, 10 guests? Especially when you were new in the industry.
Yeah, like now, for example, it's very easy. But when I first started, it was difficult. Like really trying to find different guests, different angles. And my first guest was a family based in New Zealand. And they're actually a bit of a lucky charm for me because ever since because I used them for the radio as well. And I used them for something else as well. They've been a really good charm. But it was just reaching out to someone and say, hey, I like your stuff. Would you be interested in having a discussion on...
Like this?
A bit like,
the same way I did this. And I think that's really important. So you started a podcast 4 years ago, which is on your YouTube channel. That built up a little bit of credibility and skills, and you were doing that in your free time.
I was, yes.
You were doing that at home?
Yes, I was, yeah.
And so I guess
that... literally in my bedroom, it was like... I'd have like a background. And now I've got a studio where I do it in my studio with like a green screen and everything, but literally in my bedroom.
That's really important for people to know, is you can just start it from anywhere and anything.
But also, it's the quality of the content has to be really good as well.
What does that mean for people?
The subject matter that you're discussing, the angle that you're going down, and you have to. So even though I started off as I always had a long-term vision for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the business element of it. Now I'm being paid by PRs as well. So the other day I had a PR contact me saying, we'd like a guest on your show. I have a lot of PRs now. So all my guests this year have been PR related. And
so in the beginning...
that wasn't the case, by the way, when I first started.
In the beginning, you didn't get paid for it?
No.
You did it yourself?
But I knew I would eventually.
Absolutely. And now when PRs reach out to you, you're able to charge a price point.
Exactly.
How do you define that price point?
Well, you got to know what your worth is, and if you've been in the industry for a few years, you know what your value is. And if you're doing this, if you're doing that, and you've got people who are reaching out to you, I feel as though you can value how much you charge. Then it depends, by the way, what sort of companies. For example, I did an interview with the Portuguese Tourism Board. Again, they've got a lot of funding, and I knew that anyway. So I also base it on my time editing as well. So if it's a 3-4 hour piece that's going to take me that long to edit, then I work out my price in that, you see. The easiest part is the recording, because the recording is
and what does the end user get? And I don't mean end user as a consumer and listener. I mean, when a PR is approaching you and this public profile or this figure wants to be a guest, what's the win for them?
Well, they're getting coverage, aren't they? So, and it's literally, that's all it is. The more places that you can get yourself out, like doing this or doing different interviews all over, you're everywhere, aren't you? So they're trying to, it's like that ambush marketing, isn't it? You're Absolutely. Here, there, and everywhere. Oh my goodness, I see this person everywhere.
Yeah, which is kind of what I do.
Yeah, so you've got to get yourself out there.
Absolutely. People message me, they're like, how are you everywhere?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm actually currently at home sleeping. And they're like, but your Instagram says that you're on, as an example, I think someone messaged me and be like, your Instagram says that you're in Morocco for the weekend. Your TikTok says you're in London for the weekend. And then we've just gone on your LinkedIn and you've posted a picture of you in Kenya. Yeah. Like, where are you? I'm like, I'm actually at home having a cup of tea. But that is the point you're trying to make, because you can be in different places but still be in one place. Yeah. The problem there is that you get a lot of people cloning you, which we'll get on to a second, because that's currently today, which I found out that I'm being cloned, which is interesting. I feel like I've made it.
Yeah.
In the nicest way, I don't know.
If they start to clone you, then yeah, you've definitely
made it. I've just found out that someone is using my picture and profile on Facebook.
Oh.
Trying to pretend that they're a recruiter and get people hired into job roles and take money from them.
Based on your face.
Based on my face. And so someone has randomly just messaged me being like, I think you're being cloned. And I was like, oh my God, am I having one of those moments? Like, has the fame begun? Like, in me? Oh my God, yeah, I'll take it. And then I'm like, no, take your fame pried away from it, Sonya. Someone is literally using your details, and that is not cool, and you need to go break that down, right? But Facebook is a weird place to do it, because I would think you do it on like Instagram, on TikTok. I understand Facebook is, it's not really my content of choice. But that I've digressed completely, and that is the ADHD kicking in. So I love that for us. Going back to your podcast, so you've built a personal brand. You then also have an Instagram.
Yes.
You have a LinkedIn profile, and you have a Twitter.
Yes, I have everything.
How has that helped you in how has that helped you in attracting new opportunities? And has that element of personal brand really, really kind of been like a lead generation tool? Or is it more like a portfolio to show the cool things you're doing?
It is a portfolio of what you're doing. However, it is also a lead generation as well. My work with Visit London this year, they reached out on Twitter, and it's really, really important. So whatever you put out on your socials, it's really, really important. And storytelling, it's all about storytelling. And if you're telling your story on platforms where it's another marketing tool, it's a huge marketing tool these days. And if you can put yourself out there and show that you're doing this, brands will definitely see it. And I'm very fortunate now that my platform is followed by many different PRs.
But you started from zero.
Yes.
So when you started from zero, as most people are, what would be your first top tips for anyone who's starting from scratch? Would it to, as an example, have a different profile? Would it to revigorate your profile and have that identity change? Would it to be used the relevant hashtags?
Yeah. So when I gave this advice to someone about 3-4 months ago. You just have to constantly engage. It's like comment on their post and comment. Yeah, seriously, literally, that's all you have to do. So then you're showing your name. It's like, who's this person who constantly is messaging? And
comment on whose post?
A lot of the
as in like
tourism boards, PRs,
fair,
and people well known within the industry. So just constantly, and that's technically a bit like a way of networking.
And how do you find out which profiles you need to be commenting on? What I mean by that is, if I want to work for, I really want to write for Nat Geo.
Okay.
Right. Nat Geo right now do not want me to write for them because I don't have a good enough angle, and I get that. But eventually that's one of my dreams, is to like have a Nat Geo written, be that like in the mag or online.
So the advice would be to engage with people who've been writing for Nat Geo.
Writing for Nat Geo.
For Nat Geo, not necessarily the editors.
Yes.
At first, anyway. So if you start engaging with people, this is what I feel as though has helped me. So you start engaging, then they know who you are, and let's just say if you start chatting away, DMing, etc., then you might get that chance to speak to someone within the industry who's an editor. I'm very fortunate, actually. You just mentioned Nat Geo. I met Andrew Nelson, who's actually been working for Nat Geo in the States, because Washington was the main base. He'd been working there, I think he said 19 years he's been working for, and he's been an editor as well. Very fortunate I met him, and I knew who he was for years. But then that's taken 4 years to get to that stage. And I gave a talk to his class as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, in Charleston College. And again, that only reason he reached out because he knew I was in town. And again, he wouldn't have done that if 4 years ago or 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago. But again, my reputation has been built. Has been built. But you do need to engage with people. I would say one of the things to do is engage with people who's written for Nat Geo, and then if they see your work, then they can recommend you. That's how it usually works.
I'm going to tag Nat Geo in this, by the way. I'm going to be like, Nat Geo, just FYI.
Yeah.
I put it out there. It's on my like vision board.
You should tag Andrew Nelson. He knows who I am.
I will tag Andrew Nelson. If anything, I'm going to be in his DMs.
Yes.
In a couple of days.
Just say you know me, and he'll be fine.
One thing that I really struggled with, and this was a couple of weeks ago actually, was I was invited to cover the W Budapest.
Okay.
Insane. Like, it's this 5-star hotel. I'm like, oh my God, the W? Yeah, really want to be there. Super excited. But I wasn't able to land the tier of coverage that the PR wanted. Okay. Now I'm learning about tiers, right? You've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Everybody wants to be in a tier 1. That's great, but not everybody can be. I did get a contribution or comment in another magazine, but they said it wasn't really appropriate, or it wasn't really the one that they wanted, really simply. What would your approach have been? So my approach in that instance was to reach out to editors that I already knew, try and pitch something along the lines of a hotel review, or or like traveling with my mom for the weekend and going to Budapest. No one really picked that up, and the feedback was, this is not for us, it's too luxurious, it doesn't really make sense, or we don't have the budgets to commission this. How could I maybe have done that differently? And I guess my secondary question is, should I have just taken we don't have the budgets to commission this, but we're going to commission it anyway for free, so I could have gone on that trip?
One of the big things about this industry is never work for free, because it harms the industry. Because if you, this is something that's really, really, it's been a massive topic, because even if you got £50 from it, it's better than not getting paid, because we don't want commissioning editors to commission people for free, because then they'll think, oh, actually, no, someone else will do it for free. Why should I pay you? And it actually has a massive domino effect on the industry. So in your scenario, I mean, I'm very fortunate, because I had a really well-known 5-star hotel, and I think it was a 4-star hotel in Greece, who wanted to work with me.
Very
and cool. Partly because I had the magazine, and it's I'm very fortunate in that instance. I was able to say, yeah, I can write for the magazine. So I did, and they love the coverage, and they want to bring me back, etc., to their new hotels that they're opening up next year. But in your instance, again, it's finding the right place, really, and who takes hotels and stuff. There are various magazines that would have done it, but it depends who you were pitching to as well.
But again, so if we start from that point of, I'm new to the industry, I didn't really know who I should have been pitching to. So how do you find out who you should have been pitching to versus just a positioning of, oh, I'm pitching for the sake of pitching? Like, what would your advice been to me, who wants to go and cover this 5-star hotel, who wants to go on this press trip, who also wants to please the PR person? Remember that, right? Because there was also a level of, oh, I want to please you so that we work with you in the future. What would have your tips be, especially if you maybe don't have the breadth of knowledge or the depth in the industry, and you're still trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work?
In that instance, then, if you're not too sure who to pitch to, again, speak to people that probably do know. Again, social media, Twitter is a massive platform. There's a hashtag everyone uses called, I think it's hashtag journal request.
Journal request, hashtag PR request, and hashtag like travel request.
And if you put something out there and saying, I'm looking to do this, someone will come back to you and say, you should pitch to so and so. I think that social media is a really, really, we were just talking about how important it is. It's helped me a lot. Use those hashtags and get yourself out there and say, I'm looking to do this. Does anyone know where I can pitch? Or I'm sure someone will come back to you anyway and say you should talk to so and so. And I mean, I know a lot of people. If you wanted to reach out to me and say, do you know anyone within, I can set you up with someone. Say, yeah, I know.
I think the issue there is, and I really appreciate that, it feels a bit transactional. So I personally don't like reaching out to people that I don't know unless I've built a relationship and I'm trying to help you first. I'm a big like, how can I help you? Let me listen to you type of person. And then I ask for help.
Yeah,
whereas
I get that.
I wouldn't just want to message you as an example, like we're DMing, we're doing this article in Malaysia. Oh, Shebs, I might have this person or interested in this, or might have a hotel that wants me to review them. Who should I reach out to? Because I feel like I haven't earned that level of advice from you.
Yeah, that's true. It's a catch-22 because you got to think about your career as well. And if you can't, it's tough. As I said to you, it's a cutthroat industry, and it can really get you down. But if you're new to the industry, new to the business, that is the only way to do it, really. And you may say, listen, I'm really. It's also how you approach it as well. Say, I'm new to the business, new to the industry. I'm really trying to get my foot through the door. Is there anything that you maybe help me with, advice, etc.? I'm looking to do this. And if someone reached out to me saying that, I'd have no problems. Everyone should be able to help. If someone reaches out to you, and if that person you're reaching out to you says no thanks or doesn't reply back, I don't necessarily think that they could be busy, by the way. I get that, but I don't necessarily think. And it's also, as I said to you, how you approach them as well. Obviously, specific questions. Because I've had friends tell me that people have reached out to them about who've got television shows. I want to get into television. Can you introduce me to so and so? that is not a great approach. It's really subtle. You have to be very, very subtle and build that trust, because trust is really, really important. And if you ask them the right questions, I'm certain they'll be happy to help.
And you talk about personal brand, you talk about credibility, you talk about trust. 4 years on, you are up for an award.
I am indeed, yes.
How does that make you feel? And did you, I guess, nominate yourself, or were you nominated?
No, I was nominated. So my work was submitted, and judges. I mean, I'm up against some giants. So the show is for the podcast actually. So the show's up against the BBC, Discovery Channel, Apple TV, Channel 4, and Times Travel.
That's wild. That's like you're in the nicest way, you're like YouTube podcast that you've started as a side thing 4 years ago is now up against these like historical names.
Yes, it is. But it's a testament to myself. So as an independent, it's a big win already, even if I don't win, which I'm unlikely to win, but there's obviously a possibility I could win. But it's a great win for an independent, because again, it shows you that you don't necessarily have to have a massive budget or a big company backing you with massive production companies. You got the cameras, you got everything going for you. And as I said, when I first started, I still feel as though I need to do better stuff. My studio needs improving, my cameras need improving. I just don't have the funding to do so. However, to be nominated is absolutely amazing, because it's obviously given me recognition, and I've had people already reach out just on the nomination, and the awards night is coming up very soon. And it makes me feel great, because I'm up against these established outlets, and as an independent, that is huge. And anyone listening trying to break through, hopefully it inspires you to think, I could do the same.
I really do get it. In 2021, I'm gonna say, or 2022, I can't remember exactly. But I did one of my first like podcasts for a company. It was for Capital One. I was the host. We did a series of 6 interviews for women in tech. A few months later, we were a finalist for best, I think it was tech or business podcast. And I didn't win, but we came second. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's wild. In 2022, we're in 2023 now, right? Yeah. 2022, the Everyday Hustle, which I do on the BBC, was actually up for the Biz Media Best Radio Show in the Country Award. And we were up against like well-known brands, to the extent where I honestly did not think we were going to get it. And so I actually booked myself a business trip to Kenya. And I was not even remotely aware that we were going to get it, because we got nominated. We didn't hear back. I already booked my trip, and it was actually a couple of weeks before I was going that they were like, oh, you've become a finalist. Are you able to attend? I was like, no. So my producer went, and I remember getting a phone call, like a FaceTime at like 1 a.m. Kenyan time. And she was like, we've won. I was like, what do you mean we've won? Like, I'm sleeping. You couldn't. She's like, no, we've actually won. And as a small first year of doing a show, I just thought it was the most magical experience, not just to win, but to be validated.
Yeah.
And on your, similarly, you talk about your podcast and your experience in getting that award. What I'm hearing you say is, it's nice to be validated. It's nice to be reassured. It's nice it's a nice feeling to know someone actually cares about what you're putting out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I had a conversation with another travel writer not long ago about awards and being nominated, etc. And I honestly didn't start this career path because I wanted to win awards. I just wanted to do something that I loved. It was something I really enjoyed. I wanted to help. And if you listen to some of my old podcasts going back years, my main goal was actually to help people who look like me to break into the industry or come into the industry. So the phrase I remember, if I remember correctly, I used to say, years ago, people were trying to knock down the door to go through it. So I feel as though I'm hopefully opening the door.
Like you're an ally, basically.
Yeah, so generations before tried to knock it down, but they couldn't. I feel as though I'm hoping, yourself as well, by the way, amazing what you're doing, hopefully have opened the door for, let's just say, the next generation. I don't have any kids, but let's just say my nieces, my nephew, they can say, well, my uncle's done it. I could do it now as well.
I feel like that 100%.
And I said that years ago. I want that to happen, and I want people to see that. I want people to see people like us on the screens, and hopefully. And one of the things I've not been able to break into at the moment is TV, but hopefully that is very soon.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure the same for yourself as well.
100%. I do this show because no one to this date will give me my own talk show, and I don't mean give as in like, here you can have one. So I'm doing this show to, one, create my credibility, two, to build my experience, and three,
Build
to
your
say
portfolio as well, by the way.
portfolio, yes, and three, to say, you know what, no one's going to magically give you anything. You're not that entitled, and nor are you that privileged, and nor should you think that you are. For me, it's all about, I want to be given what I've earned.
Yeah.
And so I want to earn that next step, which is a TV show, which is a contract, which is a deal, which is something on, television. But until then, I want to progress my craft on my own time and on my own terms, whilst being like, hey, well, I'm not someone who feels like I'm owed anything, but I've definitely earned my space.
Yeah.
And that for me is really important, especially as a brown woman. Like you said, I don't see a lot of me, and I didn't when I was growing up. Okay, so how can you change that narrative, and how can you be who you can't see, but also how can you shake things up in industry so it's easier for the talent of tomorrow?
Yeah, 100%. And just going back to when I was in Charleston, for example, where me going there is to help that that part of the country, that part of the city, because if they see someone like me there, and by the way, Charleston was amazing because I felt like they welcomed me in. I didn't feel out of ease, unsafe. It was fun. The only thing I would say, but it's very similar to in the UK, parts of the UK that you go to. If my mum, who wears a hijab, if she was out there with me, what that would be like. Obviously, I don't know that answer, but apart from that, everything was fantastic. And that narrative there that I'm telling the story, like just me talking to you here about it, people listening going, oh, actually, I want to go to Charleston because we want to see what it's like.
Absolutely.
For someone of let's just say, a different background anyway. But yeah, it's making sure whatever we do, I go back to that integrity. We do it at the highest of integrity. You're building that portfolio, and you've got that workload that people can respect, and respect is a very, very important. Sometimes, as I said to you before, that I might not hire or commission someone that I don't like, but I respect them, and respect is very, very important in this industry.
I appreciate that.
And you have to, if you don't, and also you got to have self-respect yourself. You're not going to take jobs, or you're not going to do something that's going to be a detriment to your characteristic. Making sure that you do something that is of value to you is really, really important.
As we start to wrap up, earlier in the show, and for your introduction, you talked about imposter syndrome, and I think it's great that you're brave enough to talk about it because not everybody wants to. What are some tools, tricks, resources that you've used in the last few years to build up your confidence, especially in an industry which a few years ago was unknown to you, and now you are a part of, some strong foundations?
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the reasons why I had a massive imposter syndrome. I went to an event last September, and I'd seen people that I'd been reading their books. I've seen them on television. I was like, oh my God, I'm in this room with people that I've respected, admired. I don't even belong here. What am I doing here? And I got that, and it just came through my head, and I just couldn't work it out. I was like, what's wrong with me? Then I also was offered the job for the editors. I was like, I'm literally not good enough. And the only way I overcame that was I literally took myself to Tunisia, and I booked a trip to the Sahara, and I said to myself, I'm going to switch off. And I spoke to this guy and said, I've got this place in the Sahara. It's like 12 miles away into the Sahara. I've got this little hut. There'll be no internet, no nothing. And I said, that's great. So I went there and literally switched everything off and just meditated really, and just sort of reevaluated what I'm doing in life, and is this what I want to do, and am I good enough? And I came to the conclusion, well, I've got this far in life without anyone not really caring about what others think. And I was so worried about what industry players were thinking of me, because a lot of them will see my stuff on socials and they were watching, and I was like, oh my God, they're watching. Why are they watching? Am I good enough? And I had all that, and just going out there and just twitching off for a week, like no internet, no nothing, was amazing. That really, really helped. And I spoke to mentors again who said, you're good enough, you're worth it. And why do people want to hang out with you? It's because, firstly, you're a good person, and that's all that matters. And it was just that really, and it just really the light bulb moment really. And I said to myself, no, I'm good enough. And ever since then, it's gone this way really. So luckily, hopefully, more next year. Hopefully, it will be, if I'm up for an award that's amongst a lot of giants, hopefully they might see me and think, well, hang on a second, if he's up for an award amongst these people here, maybe he's good enough to be with us. It is literally you're building that confidence based on the work that you do, and you have to have self-worth. You have to believe what you're doing is of a high quality, and I think that's really, really important. Overcoming imposter syndrome. It's not easy, by the way, because you might I might leave the studio and start thinking, oh, I don't know, but as long as you've done the groundworks and you've built that foundation, you should be fine going forward. And we'll always get things that we doubt, but eventually you should feel as though you're good enough to.
Are there any books, shows, other podcasts that you recommend that people tap into just to build up that knowledge around storytelling, writing, visualization that you've already mentioned today?
Some of the books that I've read a lot of self-help books. And in the past, The Power of Now have you read The Power of Now? That was a really good book that I've read. And there's a few others that I've read. They're very similar message, but I think sometimes you need to read one of those every year to sort of give yourself an idea of where you are. And again, it's all about having that confidence within you. That I've done that for the last 6-7 years. Every year I'd read one of those books. There's another book that's come out I'm aware of. I want to go buy it. Again, it's another self-help book as well. So giving you sort of ideas. There's tons you can choose. And in terms of podcast, I don't think if there is anything that I listen to that has helped.
Help doesn't just mean confidence, but it's also self-improvement or travel tips or anything that helps you to kind of even go out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I don't listen to many travel podcasts. I listen to quite a lot of podcasts that are in sports, for example. But the reason why that is because there's one podcast I've been listening to, and they talk a lot about their self-worth, whether they're good enough.
What's the name of that one?
Oh, it's the one with Simon Jordan, and I know he's not a very popular person, by the way, but he's got a really good point because he brings on these personalities and these strong personalities, but they talk about their self-doubts and their ability to go ahead and produce something on a field or on a match room or whatever. And I think it's listen to those types of people who are he brings on successful people, and you think they were successful and they had doubts, and he analyzes the questioning, he analyzes the brain thoughts and stuff, and that's really, really nice to listen to, because you think to yourself, well, actually they've gone through it themselves. This is really good for my help anyway. So I've been listening to that recently.
That's very cool.
And there's been stuff over the years, but
yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure if people follow you on socials, they'll find out. My final question to you is, given that we are in the travel space, what is top 3 destinations that you think you've been to that you'd encourage someone to travel to because they are both interesting or exciting or non-conforming?
The top destinations, and this is a question that I don't really like answering too much, but Cambodia was one of my favorites. About 8 years ago I went, nearly 9 years ago. Have you been?
Yes.
And it was
what part of Cambodia?
Well, I went to, what's the capital? I've forgotten now.
Phnom Penh.
Phnom Penh, yep. Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, and I went to Battambang. Bong.
Yep.
But I traveled through the roads and stuff, and what really, really changed my perspective in life really was when I did the killing fields, and I met some of the survivors. I don't know if they're still alive now, but I'd met them, and it really changed my perspective in life. And their history is recent as well, in the last 20 years, and they were telling me about situations, and it really, really opened my eyes.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what it was, but when I came back home, it just changed my perspective on all things life. So that's a destination everyone needs to go to. I loved India. It was difficult getting into India, by the way.
Because?
I went into the embassy and they said to me, have you got, and there's an issue with, obviously, it's very well highlighted about India and Pakistan. And so my background is from Bangladesh. However, I knew we were East Pakistan once upon a time. So they said, have you got any Pakistani roots? And I went, no. I was like, are you sure? I was like, I'm 100% sure. I might have said to them, well, my granddad was technically East Pakistan. Because I said that, they made it very difficult. And I couldn't even get the visa from the place that I was trying to get it. And they just would not give it to me. So I literally had to go to an agency in the end. And it cost me more than it should have done. And it took me a couple of weeks. Well, it should have taken me a couple of hours. It took me a couple of weeks. And they just made it so hard for me because of the situation with India and Pakistan. And actually, when I went to India, and it was one of the most amazing places I've ever been to. I don't know whether you've been to India. It was
not yet.
Phenomenal.
Probably because of the Pakistan-India issue.
But also
when I go to India, I really want to really enjoy and immerse myself in India, and I think you need time for that.
You do. Yeah.
I don't have time right now.
Okay. Yeah, and it was absolutely, it was fantastic because again, from someone from they love people from Bangladesh anyway, so they said, oh yeah, we but then there were people that said, oh, we hate Pakistan, but that's just I put it down to education, and
Absolutely.
It's all about educating someone. But no, that was amazing. And Brazil is another destination that always comes into my head. I could have chosen many, but I absolutely love Brazil. It was just one of those countries where everyone's flamboyant and everyone's willing to help. Part of it is dangerous. You've got to be careful. You've got to have your wits about you.
Understood.
But that's what I loved about it. You see, nothing was for sure. Everything was. Anything could have happened on the day, and you can go one place and then you might meet someone. And going to the favela when I was in Rio was amazing because you had to go in with a local. So I contacted a local and said, I'd like to go see the favela and what it's like for people living in that area. And just to that's what I was trying to say to you before about when you're traveling on your own, just going to going to places where a press trip won't take you there because it's either danger or whatnot.
Absolutely.
When you're there on your own, you can go somewhere and really get a feel of the people, the local people, and that's really, really important.
It makes a big
so
difference.
those are my top three. I could have chosen many more. I've done many different things, but
I know I really, really appreciate that. I always say that I went to Japan. I wasn't ready for Japan.
Japan's good.
Japan.
Okay.
I wasn't ready for Japan.
I've still not gone to Japan yet.
I went to Japan in 2015. I spent 2 weeks there, traveled, as you would as a young professional with very little money. So you saw the sites very differently, without Wi-Fi, without internet, without Instagram. So you really took it in. But I wasn't culturally ready. I wasn't advanced enough for Japan. Everything from my eating habits to my traveling habits to what you wanted to see. So I would encourage Japan is one of those places I'd encourage someone to go again. But you spoke about Cambodia and the killing fields. I went to Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, and then I took a day tour to the water villages. And that changed the way I look at life because you actually have families without any internet, Wi-Fi access. And it sounds like quite privileged to be saying this, but the perspective is so different. You have families and extended families living on water boats. But I think what really both shocked me but also opened my perspective was they don't really have access to hospitals. And they don't necessarily have access to medical care. So especially women, when they get pregnant, their families are then helping them through it. And there was really, stories of if the pregnancy doesn't work out and the baby is born in a way that, is not life, and it's not sustainable, and it's not, they just chuck the baby off board.
Oh, wow. So
it wasn't a point of like, you can reach a hospital. There aren't many hospitals there, and actually most people there can't afford a hospital. So the family members on board are trained how to, kind of what's the word, birth babies and look after babies. But a lot of women are die or babies die because they don't have the efficient medical care, and then you just chuck it off board as if it doesn't have its own life or entity, and then you carry on with your day. And that to me was one of those things where I was like, I've heard it. Of course you've heard these stories. I've not heard it from someone who's actually experienced it, and I haven't seen it. And I think that really, I came back and I really just was grateful for the life that we live. And, though the UK itself has many of its own problems. We do live in a society where we have access to some of the basic requirements in life.
Yep.
And so I think one thing that traveling really teaches me is to realize that everyone is living a different life and different perspective. And so how can you, at least for me, be a social first person where you're helping to improve the world and provide access, similar to you opening doors, letting people in, versus taking away.
Yeah. I totally get it. And it's very similar to my Cambodia stuff, where I saw people. I used to get stressed quite a lot. I don't get stressed at all anymore. I don't know whether you can tell from the camera. I'm not really struggling with. It was a case of where I saw them. They had families killed, etc., and they were very happy people. And I was like, wow, these people are so happy. They're like the happiest people that you could ever come across. And they went through this torture. And I'm thinking, and I'm stressing about this. And it literally just changed the way I thought. That is what travel can do. And it can really, really help you within yourself. And it can really, really bring out the best in you. And I think that's what I would always recommend people to go out on their own. And you mentioned before, actually, you didn't wait for your friends, etc. Similar to me, actually, when I first started traveling solo, going more than a decade now.
Just do it.
And just do it, yeah. And funny thing you said as well, you said there was no internet or anything. When I first started traveling, there was no internet whatsoever. You had to do the mapping out before you went. And I remember when I went on a trip back in 2005, I didn't even take my phone with me because I said, well, why do I need to take my phone? I can't use it out there. Now I couldn't imagine not taking my phone because you need everything on your phone, don't you?
Evidence, isn't it? It's like evidence that you've showed up, evidence
Yeah.
that you've done the work, evidence that you've witnessed it.
Yeah, but not just that. You can navigate yourself.
Absolutely.
So Google Maps or anything. You need your phone all the time. You can book stuff on
Like
the
a
go.
safety perspective.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So now it's just changed the way where we do stuff anyway. And as I said, if you finish off in terms of career path, digital way of the way it is right now, digital platforms have helped nurture a career. And I think it's only for the better. I think we're going to get more and more people coming through of different talents, and competition is fierce. However, you said you got to have something unique. You do have to have something unique, but you'll find it within yourself. Don't create something just for the sake of it. You'll get there. It'll take time to find a identity. And I think that's a very important message to give out.
I think that's a great message to end on. So Shebs, obviously people want to connect with you, and if they do, where can they find you, and also how can they listen to your podcast?
Yeah, you can find me on shebsthewanderer.com. Everything's on there, and if you Google Shebs the Wanderer, you'll find me on all the socials. I think if you Google my name, Shebs Alom, I come up anyway. In fact, I think if you Google Shebs, I come up. So I'm quite high up on the search engine, and you can listen to or read all my stuff on my website, watch all the podcasts or listen to it. Those are the places.
Fab. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great.
Fabulous.
That was good.
Fabulous.